This weekend, one of my most anticipated films of the year, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, drops in theaters. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Let me know what's your excitement level for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and what did you think about it? Now, as for me, I adored the trilogy of Planet of the Apes films from the last decade. I just think they're fantastic blockbusters that are thrilling, exciting, emotionally devastating. There's complex characters, earned drama. Planet of the Apes is the example of how sequels, remakes, reimaginings can still be creatively vibrant. I mean, Caesar was my favorite character of the last decade. So when they said they were doing another film in the same continuity, I was naturally curious. A lot of the story group was returning. That made me have some confidence in the project, but they hired Wes Ball as the director. He previously did the Maze Runner films. Hey, I got no hate for them, but they didn't really impress me either, so that made me kind of nervous about this project. I appreciated that they didn't rush them out, they took their time, and the trailers looked really good. So I went into the theater very optimistic, very excited, but also with a certain caution, cautiously optimistic. What did I think about the film? Let's get started with the good. And I'm very happy to say that this remains the most consistent blockbuster franchise that is currently running, and moving forward, I will no longer be doubting Wes Ball and his abilities. He did a fantastic job here, continuing this world, delivering characters that you care about, having action sequences that are thrilling and exciting, being able to pull out big emotions, and capturing this world that feels huge and that you want to explore. One of the cool things about the Planet of the Apes franchise is, despite that there's 10 of them going back now over 50 years, they keep finding new stories to tell and new angles to explore this idea of talking apes and apes becoming the dominant creatures on our planet. And while this continues the trilogy from the past decade, it tells a very different type of story with its own conflict and its own angle on everything going on. It doesn't in any way feel like a rehash, both in the story level or on the character level. They found something new to do with this concept, and so much that comes back to the way that it handles the world building and the lore, where this story jumps forward several hundred years into the future, and essentially it's built on the foundation of the previous trilogy of films, where Caesar's legacy has created this world where all these different apes factions exist. And while most of us viewers that have seen that previous trilogy have that information, we're going into this world and exploring all the different ways that Caesar's legacy has shaped this world. In the movie, we're following Noah from this very specific clan that has a connection to birds, and it's fascinating just to see what their world looks like. And we're experiencing this Planet of Apes from Noah's perspective as he begins to explore this world, and we run into different clans of apes, different types of humans. And all of these characters, all of these animals that we interact with trace back to the events of the previous trilogy. And we see just how it spreads out in different directions, how different groups decided to interact with the past, how they interpret Caesar's words, the ramifications of what happened. And so we're exploring that all through Noah's eyes. And it's just fun to go into this world and wander around. It's filled with mystery and intrigue, where in a sense, we have more information than the lead character. So where this gets cool is that us as the audience have more information about the past than the characters in the story. But the characters in the story have more information about the present in the context of the film than us as an audience, which creates an interesting dynamic between the audience and the characters in the film, and creates unexpected mysteries as they're interacting and we're waiting to see how they will react to different information, how each faction reacts to it. And we're learning more and more about each of them. And it finds a way to use our knowledge as the audience to create interesting mysteries that are unexpected, you couldn't normally do in a story where we have the same knowledge base as the characters. And of course, the big place where this plays out is with Caesar's legacy. Caesar isn't in this movie because it takes place hundreds of years after he died, but his actions shaped this world, and the film thematically is exploring legacy and the way that it can be misused, the way that it can continue to inspire people. And so Caesar is all over this movie without being in the movie. And our knowledge of who he actually was and what he actually did gives us this unique perspective on all the different ways that these characters in the present of the film respond to what they know of Caesar and their perception of who he was. Now, speaking of Caesar, one of the big questions a lot of people had going into this movie was, can it work without having Caesar in the lead? Because Caesar was just such a compelling character. And no character in this movie is as compelling as Caesar was in that past trilogy of films, but that doesn't change the fact that there are strong characters in this film. Our lead character that I mentioned before, Noah, is essentially just this young, naive adventurer. He likes to explore. He likes to challenge himself. He's willing to put himself in harm's way for duty, for the people that he cares about. He'll step into action, but he also doubts himself. He's trying to live up to the reputation of his father. And so he feels very human, but he's also someone that you're rooting for, someone that has faults, someone that's very naive and is to the world that he's in and is slowly learning about it. And there's just something compelling about that. It's a little bit tougher to talk about some of the other characters in the film because there's so many things not revealed in the trailers that I don't want to say here. But like the way that they use the lead human character, once again, helps with that world building, expanding our understanding of everything that's taken place in the several hundred years that have passed. She's very complex. She doesn't simply fit into anything. Once again, it's tough to just explain it without going into spoilers, but by the end of it, I didn't know how I felt about her, and I liked that. I liked the way that she was used, the way that she was represented in the film, and the implications of what it stood for. Our main villain, Proximus, can be a lot of fun, because in a lot of ways, he's a Koba-esque tyrant, but he's also nothing like Koba. Koba had just a rage to him and anger that you could just always feel in his presence, whereas Proximus has a bit of a joyful personality. He just happens to have a terrible interpretation of Caesar's words that leads him to do horrible things, but he's jovial, he's excited, and that's such a different type of villain for this franchise that also feels true to the way that the apes have often been personified here. There's a number of just laughs in here. It's not like a comedy. It's not like a Marvel movie that's dropping quips. There's just the right amount of humor to break some of the tension that worked really nicely for me in the film. Of course, you have to talk about the VFX. They're flawless. There is not a frame in this movie that rings false. Everything is believable. And it's a movie that the number I saw, it said it cost $160 million. This is another film that fits into that category where you go, how does this movie that is 2.5 hours of photorealistic talking animals look so good at $160 million, where so many movies that came out over the last 2 years cost twice as much and look dramatically worse? It's one of those films because every frame is believable. There is not a single frame in this movie where you go, I don't believe that. That looks fake. Everything is believable, and it's talking animals in real environments. And finally, it's a film that is able to exist in the context of the near extinction of the human race and still find a certain amount of hope inside of it. It never cheapens the bleakness of what's going on, but it finds that glimmer of hope. My good friend Griffin Schiller of Film Speak described it as a new hope of the Apes franchise, and I can see that. There's certain ways with what it does with its story, even kind of the structure of the story, but some of the notes with where it goes later on in the film, I can see that. And it's one of the things I appreciated about it, and one of the ways that it doesn't feel like a rehash of the previous films that could be so bleak. And this one has that, but it also has hope. And so I adore this continuity of Planet of the Apes films. This is another great addition to the franchise. It's almost certainly going to be in my top 10 of the year, but there are a few more things to talk about with this movie. But before we do that, today's video is brought to you by Raycon. You may have heard me talk about Raycon's everyday earbuds before and thought, hey, I can get the same sound quality as the big guys at half the price. But if you haven't pulled the trigger on a pair of Raycons, now is the time to check them out because they've just launched their upgraded model of the best-selling everyday earbuds. Raycon's upgraded everyday earbuds have active noise cancellation, an ergonomic design, and multi-point connectivity that lets you pair with 2 devices at once. They're available in a variety of vibrant new colors to complement any and all skin tones. I went with blue to match my pretty blue eyes. I used mine on my recent trip to Nashville. The active noise cancellation canceled out enough of the plain noise that I could hear my music and audiobooks. They have optimized gel tips for a cozy, comfortable fit. I actually slept with mine in my ears. They were comfortable enough and non-invasive enough that I could do that. With the upgraded model, there's no better time to check out Raycon. Go to buyraycon.com/Sean Chandler today to get 20% off your Raycon order plus free shipping. That's right, you'll get 20% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/Sean Chandler, buyraycon.com/Sean Chandler. Getting back to our review, and we're going to talk about the mixed aspects of the film. As we go into this, these aren't good or bad things. These are just some questions that people have been asking since I watched the film. First one that comes to mind: can you watch this film without having seen the trilogy from the last decade? The short answer is yes, but I wouldn't recommend it. You can go into this movie without having seen the previous 3 films, and it will make sense to you. The film explains enough about what's going on with an opening, with a card at the beginning of the film, and then throughout the dialogue throughout the film will explain to you what you need to know. But I wouldn't recommend experiencing this film in that manner. I would at least watch Rise of the Planet of the Apes as well as Dawn of the Planet of the Apes to just establish your understanding of what happened to the human race, as well as what Caesar did on his journey. Caesar and his character and his rise to leadership is at the core of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And the best way to experience that is to watch that trilogy of films. Other question is, what age do you need to be to watch this film and appreciate it? I took my 12-year-old to go watch it, and he had enjoyed watching Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and wanted to go see this movie with me. Every kid's different. I took my 6th grade son, and he was able to handle it and had a good time with him. So I was supposed to see this movie as a date night with my wife, but then this guy wanted to go see it instead, and I am totally on board if this guy wants to get into the Planet of the Apes movies. What'd you think about it?
But I liked it. The lore was good. Like, everything to do with Caesar was good. I liked it.
From there, let's move on to the bad. And as I go into this, I thoroughly enjoyed this film, so these didn't in any way dramatically hurt the film for me, but they are things worth discussing. First one that came to mind as I was leaving the theater, this movie doesn't have the dramatic and emotional weight of the last 3 films. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the last 3 films were all about the end of human civilization as we know it, the rise of a new civilization of intelligent apes that can talk, and at its center was the rise of this character, Caesar, who's an inspiring figure. That's a lot of emotional weight when I rewatch Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which I've now been watching for 10 years, the inherent tragedy of that tale still kind of turns my stomach in knots. And this movie doesn't have that. Towards the end of it, it moves in an inspiring direction that has a little bit of a replacement emotion to it, where you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. I gotcha. I see what you're doing here. And somewhat to that same point, I don't think it's quite as intelligent of a blockbuster as those three films were. I just think they were able to do something really special. This is a great adventure. I don't know that I'd fully call it a smart blockbuster or as smart of a blockbuster as those three films were able to be. Last one on here, as you move into the back half of the film and you start to fully understand everything that's going on and what everyone's objectives are, I think it struggles a little bit to balance between intrigue and a feeling of urgent danger and stakes, where you've got Noah's initial mission that he's on, you've got Proximus's objective, and you've got what's going on with our human character. And all this is tough to talk about because I don't want to spoil things, and that's also the trick in the movie of how do you balance intrigue and stakes? And I think sometimes it's trying to hold back on reveals a little bit too long, and so the stakes felt lower than they actually were, with some things going on that you did have sky-high stakes, but because you don't fully know the big picture until very late into the film, it loses some of that sense of urgent danger. In particular, as you get to the camp on the beach, there's a certain sense to which you feel safe when you're in the most dangerous place. When we're at our camp at the beach, where I think we needed more difficulty to do what our characters do in the last 40% of the film. I loved this film. It's going to be in my top 10 at the end of the year. Just a couple things to bring up. Real quick, before I give you my final thoughts, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes? Also, come back this weekend. I will be ranking all of the Planet of the Apes movies. I've been watching a bunch of documentaries, behind-the-scenes special features, reading books all about the history, the making of the Planet of the Apes film, so I'm very excited to talk about the entire Planet of the Apes saga. I love this current continuity of Planet of the Apes films. This is another great addition where it might not fully have the emotional weight of the last three films. It replaces that with a lore, a world filled with intrigue and mysteries that you want to see explored. It sets up some potential stories that I certainly hope that we're gonna see. I can't wait to get more in this world of the Planet of the Apes. This is the most consistently good blockbuster franchise that is currently running. Overall, it's an A. It's a 9 out of 10 on the entertainment scale. And please go see this film because I want more blockbusters like this. Join me down below in the comment section. Come back in a few days for that ranking of the Planet of the Apes movies, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.